The day humanity discovered faster than light travel, they threw the biggest party Earth had ever seen. People danced in the streets of Tokyo, New York, Lagos, and Mumbai. Children looked up at the stars with wonder, knowing that those distant lights were no longer impossible dreams. Humanity was ready to meet their neighbors in the cosmos. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Endeavour, humanity's first diplomatic vessel. Her heart raced as the massive alien structure materialized ahead. The Concordate station was beautiful beyond imagination, a city of crystalline towers and flowing energy, larger than Earth's moon. 40,000 different species called this place home, 40,000 civilizations that had existed for hundreds of thousands of years. Sarah smoothed her blue diplomatic uniform and checked her translator device one more time. Behind her, the crew carried carefully prepared gifts. There were paintings from every culture on Earth, recordings of music from Bach to Bollywood, samples of human literature translated into mathematical concepts that any species could understand. They brought their best scientific discoveries, their most moving poetry, their deepest philosophy. The Concordate's greeting party was impressive. Beings of every shape floated, walked, and phased into the docking bay. Some looked like living crystals. Others were clouds of gas held together by force fields. There were creatures with dozens of eyes and beings that existed partially in dimensions Sarah's mind couldn't quite process. They all radiated ancient wisdom and calm superiority. A tall being made of flowing silver introduced itself as Harmonizer Velkoth. Its voice sang directly into Sarah's mind. "Welcome, humanity. You have traveled far to reach us. We acknowledge your achievement." Sarah's smile was genuine and warm. "Thank you for receiving us. Humanity has dreamed of this moment for generations. We bring gifts of friendship and hope for a peaceful future together among the stars." Over the following weeks, humanity presented everything they had prepared. Human musicians performed alongside alien composers. Scientists shared theories and marveled at technologies they had only imagined. Children from Earth sent drawings and messages of hope. Sarah poured her heart into every speech, every meeting, every conversation. The Concordate observed it all with polite interest. They asked questions about Earth's history. Many questions. They wanted to know about wars, about pollution, about poverty, about all the things humanity had struggled with. Sarah answered honestly, explaining how far humanity had come, how much they had learned, how desperately they wanted to be better. Then came the civilization assessment. Sarah sat in a vast chamber where representatives from all 40,000 species would vote on humanity's application to join the Concordate. The room was silent except for the soft hum of translation fields. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she waited. Harmonizer Velkoth's voice filled the space. "We have reviewed humanity's application for membership in the Galactic Concordate. We have studied their history, their culture, their technological development, and their social structures. The vote will now proceed." Lights began appearing on the massive display. Red lights. Thousands of them, tens of thousands of them. Each red light was a species voting against humanity's admission. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She watched the numbers climb. 10,000 votes against. 20,000. 30,000. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. The final count appeared. 39,147 species voted to deny Earth membership. 153 species abstained. 0 voted in favor. Velkoth's melodious voice showed no emotion. "The Concordate has decided that humanity is not yet ready for membership. Your species displays concerning patterns. Your history of warfare spans your entire existence. You have nearly destroyed your own planet multiple times. Your people still struggle with tribalism, nationalism, and discrimination among your own kind. Your emotions are volatile and unpredictable. You celebrate violence in your entertainment. You lack the stability and peace required for Concordate membership." Sarah stood slowly. Her voice was steady despite the pain crushing her chest. "We came in peace. We came with open hearts. We asked only for a chance to prove ourselves, to learn from you, to grow alongside you. And you shall have that chance," Velkoth replied, "in isolation. We will place quarantine buoys around your solar system. No ship may enter or leave. When humanity has evolved beyond its violent nature, perhaps in several thousand years you may apply again. This is for your protection and ours." Sarah looked at the thousands of alien species watching her. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked indifferent. A few looked disgusted. She squared her shoulders and lifted her chin. "I understand. Humanity will remember this day. We came to you with friendship. You have shown us where we stand." She paused, then added quietly, "We won't forget." The journey back to Earth was silent. Sarah sat alone in her quarters, staring at the stars. Behind the Endeavor, massive silver buoys were being positioned around humanity's solar system. Beautiful, impassable, and absolutely final. When she finally addressed the crew, her eyes were dry and hard. "Send a message to Earth. Tell them we've been rejected. Tell them the galaxy doesn't want us." She took a deep breath. "And tell them we're going to show them what a mistake they made." Earth received the news with shock, then grief, then anger. In the streets where people had danced just months before, they now stood in silence. Children who had dreamed of alien friends cried themselves to sleep. Leaders who had hoped for cosmic wisdom now faced the reality that humanity was alone. But in that grief, something else was born. A determination that burned cold and steady. Humanity had reached for the stars and been slapped down. They had offered friendship and been spurned. They had asked for a chance and been locked away like dangerous animals. The message was clear. If humanity wanted to reach the stars, they would do it alone. And they would make sure that the next time the galaxy saw them, it would be on humanity's terms. The quarantine buoys floated at the edge of the solar system, silent sentinels keeping humanity locked inside their cosmic prison. For the first year, people stared at them with hatred. By the second year, they stopped looking at them at all. By the fifth year, the buoys became a symbol of something else entirely. A challenge. Dr. James Okonkwo stood before the United Earth Assembly, his dark eyes intense with purpose. He was young, barely 40, but his ideas had captured the imagination of billions. "We spent centuries fighting each other," he said, his Nigerian accent clear and strong. "We wasted resources on borders and bombs. The galaxy called us violent and unstable. They weren't entirely wrong." The assembly hall was silent. Representatives from every nation listened. "But they made one critical error," James continued. "They assumed we couldn't change. They locked us away and forgot about us. So let me ask you this. What if we prove them wrong? Not for them, for us." The Human Renaissance Project began 6 months later. It was the most ambitious undertaking in human history. Every nation contributed. Every person played a part. The goal was simple to state but staggering to achieve: transform humanity into something better while expanding across the solar system and beyond. The first changes came fast. Without the distraction of trying to impress alien species, humanity focused inward. Old conflicts seemed pointless when faced with the reality of cosmic rejection. Why fight over oil when fusion power was finally perfected? Why argue about borders when there was an entire solar system to develop? Earth's governments didn't exactly merge. It was more like they gradually realized national boundaries were old-fashioned concepts. The Terran unity formed naturally, organically, as people started thinking of themselves as humans first and citizens of specific countries second. There were arguments and difficulties, of course. Change never came easy, but the external pressure of the quarantine buoys kept pushing humanity together. Technology advanced at a breathtaking pace. With global cooperation and unlimited funding, problems that had seemed impossible began falling like dominoes. Aging was slowed, then nearly stopped. Most people could expect to live 3 or 4 centuries in good health. Diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia were eliminated. Poverty became a relic of history as fusion power and automated manufacturing created true abundance. Mars was next. Within 50 years of the quarantine, the red planet bloomed with green. Massive terraforming projects turned the barren world into something approaching Earth-like. Cities rose under protective domes that gradually became unnecessary as the atmosphere thickened. Children born on Mars had never seen the Concordat, had never experienced rejection. They knew only the boundless optimism of human achievement. Venus followed. That project took longer. The hellish planet required patience and engineering on a scale that would have seemed magical a century before. But humanity had time. They weren't going anywhere. Massive solar shades cooled the surface while machines scrubbed the toxic atmosphere. By year 300 of the quarantine, Venus had oceans. Commander Liu Wei supervised the secret project that would change everything. She was 247 years old but looked 40, her mind sharp as ever. The Beyond Initiative was humanity's insurance policy. Using advanced propulsion systems that pushed the boundaries of physics, automated ships were launched into deep space, far beyond the Concordat's reach. These ships carried frozen embryos, artificial wombs, and AI caretakers. They also carried humanity's entire knowledge base and a simple instruction: grow, thrive, and remember where you came from. Liu watched as ship number 10,000 launched into the dark. 10,000 colony worlds, scattered across the galaxy in areas the Concordat had never explored. Some would fail. Many would succeed. Either way, humanity would never truly be contained again. The weapons development happened quietly. Nobody talked about it much. It felt wrong somehow to become the violent species the Concordat had accused them of being. But Director Chen, Sarah's great-grandson, made a simple argument that won the debate. Being peaceful and being defenseless are not the same thing. We'll build the weapons, we'll lock them away, and we'll pray we never need them. The weapons were terrifying. Humanity had always been creative at destruction, and centuries of advanced technology had amplified that creativity to frightening levels. There were bombs that could age stars to death, missiles that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously, AI-controlled warships that thought faster than organic minds could perceive, drones that could replicate themselves using any available matter. All of it was classified. All of it was locked behind security systems that required global consensus to unlock. All of it sat waiting, just in case. But weapons weren't the real change. The real transformation was cultural. Humanity stopped looking outward for validation and started looking inward for meaning. Art flourished in ways the Renaissance couldn't have imagined. Philosophy evolved. New religions formed while old ones adapted. People asked deeper questions about consciousness, purpose, and existence. Psychologically, humanity evolved too. Therapy became as common as education. Meditation and mindfulness were taught to children. The old tribalism didn't disappear. Humans were still human. But it was channeled into sports, arts, and friendly competition rather than hatred and war. Violence still existed, but it was rare and shocking rather than commonplace. By year 500 of the quarantine, the solar system was unrecognizable. A Dyson swarm of solar collectors surrounded the sun, capturing energy on a scale the old world couldn't have imagined. Thousands of space stations housed billions of people. Every moon and asteroid of significance had been settled or mined. Humanity had built paradise inside their prison. Year 6060 arrived with little fanfare. Earth was celebrating the Founders' Festival, honoring Sarah Chen and the other ambassadors who had made that first journey. An elderly man, one of the last who had been alive during the quarantine's beginning, was interviewed. "Do you still hate them?" the reporter asked. "The Concordat?" The old man thought for a long moment. "No," he said finally. "I pity them. They had a chance to know us. They chose fear instead. That's their loss, not ours." That same day, the Terran Unity sent one final message toward the quarantine boys. It was simple, just 8 words. "We won't ask twice. Remember that." Then humanity returned to building their future, comfortable in their isolation, confident in their strength, and utterly uninterested in the civilizations that had rejected them so long ago. The galaxy had voted to banish Earth. Humanity had voted to stop caring what the galaxy thought. It would be another 187 years before they would hear from the Concordat again. By then, everything would be different. The Voidborn came from a place between dimensions, from the gaps in reality where physics broke down and madness lived. They didn't communicate. They didn't negotiate. They simply consumed. The first Concordat system to die was on the Outer Rim, a peaceful world called Thesara Prime, home to 14 billion beings who had never known war. The Voidborn arrived without warning, massive shapes that hurt to look at, things that existed in too many dimensions at once. Within 6 hours, Thesara Prime was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. The star still existed, but it was dead, cold, giving off no heat or light. The planets were empty husks. No bodies, no ruins. Just nothing. Harmonizer Zethkel stared at the reports in his crystalline chambers and felt something his species rarely experienced. Fear. He was young by Concordat standards, only 8,000 years old, but he had studied history. He knew what happened when the galaxy faced existential threats. The Concordat debated, and debated. And by the time they agreed on action, it was usually too late. 3 more systems vanished in the first month. Then 10, then 30. The Voidborn were spreading like a plague, moving faster than the Concordat could track. Refugee ships streamed toward core worlds carrying terrified survivors and fragmentary reports. The things in the dark didn't just kill, they erased. They left holes in reality where civilizations used to be. Admiral Kess was one of the few military commanders in the Concordat who actually understood war. Her species, the Drachnor, had been warriors before joining the Concordat 50,000 years ago. She studied the old battles, maintained what passed for a defense fleet, and had always been considered somewhat primitive by her peers. Now those same peers were begging for her expertise. "We need to evacuate the rim worlds," Kess argued before the High Council. Her forearms gestured sharply at the star map. "Pull everyone back to defensible positions." "Prepare for—" "Absolutely not," interrupted Councillor Vorn, a being of pure energy that had lived for 100,000 years. "Evacuation implies we're abandoning our people. It would cause panic. We need to study these entities, understand them, negotiate." "They don't negotiate." Kess's voice was harsh. "They consume. Every hour we waste in debate, another million souls die." The debate continued for 2 months. By then, 300 systems had gone dark. 3,000 species had been completely eliminated. The death toll was beyond calculation. And the Voidborn kept coming, their hunger endless, their advance unstoppable. The Concordat's defense fleets were a joke. Beautiful ships designed for ceremonial displays and exploration. They had weapons technically, but nothing that could stop the Voidborn. The few battles that occurred were massacres. Concordat ships that had never fired shots in anger discovered their weapons were decorative at best. The Voidborn tore through shields like they weren't there and consumed the ship's hull. Worse, the Concordat couldn't agree on strategy. Some species wanted to flee toward the galactic core. Others insisted on standing their ground. Many simply froze in terror, paralyzed by the impossibility of what they faced. The Concordat had existed for 200,000 years precisely because they avoided conflict. Peace through cooperation, harmony through understanding. Now that philosophy was killing them. By year 1 of the crisis, over 3,000 member species were extinct. The Concordat still existed, but barely. Panic had replaced order. Ancient civilizations that had stood for millions of years were collapsing under the weight of refugees and fear. The beautiful stations that had impressed humanity so long ago were overcrowded, desperate places now. Zethkal found himself in an emergency session of the High Council. Of the 40,000 species that had once sent representatives, only 37,000 remained. 3,000 empty seats served as silent testimony to the Voidborn's efficiency. "We have exhausted all conventional options," Councillor Vorn admitted, his energy form flickering with distress. "Our weapons are ineffective. Our strategies fail. The Voidborn adapt to everything we try. We need something else. Something violent," Admiral Kess said bluntly. "Something the Concordat has never been willing to become." An uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. Species that prided themselves on pacifism shifted uncomfortably. The truth was ugly but undeniable. They needed warriors, and the Concordat had none. "What about the humans?" A small voice said. It came from Representative Pila, a gentle species that looked like walking flowers. "The ones we quarantined. They were violent, perhaps." The chamber erupted in debate. Some were horrified at the suggestion. Humans were primitives, barely above savages. Others were desperate enough to consider anything. A few noted that the humans had been quiet for 660 years. Perhaps they had died out or destroyed themselves as predicted. Zethkal studied the old files on humanity. The species that had come to the Concordat with open hearts and been turned away. The species called too violent, too emotional, too dangerous. He read Ambassador Sarah Chen's final words. "We won't forget." The vote took 6 months. 6 months while another 2,000 systems died. 6 months of arguing about whether humanity even still existed. 6 months of pride wrestling with desperation. Finally, the results came through. 34,201 species voted to request aid from Earth. 2,646 voted against. The rest were already gone, consumed by the Voidborn or scattered as refugees. Zethkal volunteered to lead the delegation. Perhaps because he was young and hadn't voted in that original rejection. Perhaps because he understood what they were asking for, help from a species they had insulted and imprisoned. Perhaps because someone needed to face humanity and admit the Concordat had been wrong. His ship, the Harmony's Light, approached the Sol system with a small escort. The quarantine boys were still there, unchanged after 1660 years. Zethkal sent the standard diplomatic hail, not knowing if anyone would even respond. The buoys powered down without a word. The path to Earth opened, and what Zethkal saw beyond them made his crystalline form ring with shock. Sol System was not a graveyard. It was not a primitive wasteland. It was a monument to what determination could build. A massive swarm of structures surrounded the sun, capturing its energy. Thousands of stations orbited in perfect formation. Mars glowed green. Venus sparkled with oceans. Every moon, every asteroid held evidence of habitation. And Earth was a jewel, a perfect garden world that made his homeworld look primitive by comparison. Harmony's light, this is Unity Station. A human voice said calmly, "State your purpose." Zethkal found his voice with difficulty. "I am Harmonizer Zethkal of the Galactic Concordat. We request an audience. It's urgent. The galaxy is dying." There was a long pause. Then, "Proceed to Unity Station. Dock at Bay 7. Someone will meet you." As his ship moved through the Sol system, Zethkal saw more and more evidence of human achievement. Ships that made Concordat vessels look like toys, structures that bent physics in ways his people hadn't imagined, and everywhere signs of a thriving civilization. The species they had called too primitive had built heaven while the galaxy burned. Now the Concordat needed them, needed the violence they had been so eager to condemn. Zethkal felt something he had never experienced before: shame. The question was whether humanity would care. Unity Station floated above Earth like a crown. It was massive, larger than old Earth's moon, a structure of flowing metal and contained gardens that housed 50 million people. Zethkal's escort led him through corridors that were both beautiful and efficient. Humans passed by, some looking baseline, others enhanced with cybernetics, a few who seemed more AI than organic. All of them moved with purpose and confidence. Director Amara Chen waited in a simple meeting room. She was tall with dark hair and eyes that held ancient grief tempered by time. At 183 years old, she looked perhaps 30. She wore a plain gray suit and no jewelry except a small pin showing Earth and its solar system. "Harmonizer Zethkal," she said, gesturing to a seat. Her voice was polite but not warm. "Please sit. I understand you've come a long way." Zethkal settled his crystalline form onto the chair designed for various body types. "Director Chen, thank you for seeing me. I know our peoples have history." "History," Amara repeated, and something flickered in her eyes. "Is that what we're calling it?" She pulled up a holographic display. 660 years ago, my great-great-grandmother came to the Concordat as an ambassador. She brought gifts and friendship. She hoped to join your civilization. Do you know what happened next?" "I know," Zethkal said quietly. "I've read the records. The vote was harsh. 39,047 species voted against us. Not a single one voted in our favor." Amara's voice remained calm, but each word landed like a hammer. "You called us too violent, too emotional, too dangerous to join civilized society. You locked us in our solar system like criminals and told us to come back in a few thousand years if we evolved. I was not born yet. I know." Amara held up a hand. "You personally bear no guilt, but you represent the Concordat, and the Concordat made its position clear. So tell me, Harmonizer, what brings you to our prison after all these centuries?" Zethkal's form flickered with distress. He pulled up his own display, showing the spreading darkness of void-born territory. "The galaxy is dying. We're facing an existential threat we cannot stop. The void-born consume everything. They've destroyed 3,000 species. 5,000 more are refugees. The Concordat's fleets are useless. Our strategies fail. We're losing." He met her eyes. "We need help. We were wrong about humanity. We admit it. We're begging for assistance. We'll offer full Concordat membership, a seat on the High Council, reparations, formal apologies, anything you want. Just please help us." Amara listened in silence. When he finished, she stood and walked to the window. Earth rotated slowly below, impossibly beautiful. Cities glittered like jewels among green forests and blue oceans. She was quiet for so long that Zethkal worried she wouldn't respond at all. "Let me show you something," she finally said. The holographic display expanded, filling the room. It showed a map of the galaxy, but not the Concordat's territory. This map showed systems far beyond in regions marked as unexplored or empty space, except they weren't empty. Thousands of points of light dotted the display, each marked with human symbols. 10,000 colony worlds, Amara said softly. "We couldn't leave Sol's system, so we sent ships beyond your borders. Generation ships, colony ships, seed ships. They've been growing for centuries. Some failed. Most succeeded. Right now there are roughly 400 billion humans living on worlds you've never even heard of. Zethkal stared at the display, understanding dawning like cold water. You left anyway. We left without asking permission, Amara confirmed. We learned that lesson well. Don't ask species who fear you for approval. Just go. She zoomed the display back to Sol system. Here we have 50 billion more. Mars, Venus, Europa, Titan, thousands of stations. We've solved aging, disease, poverty. We've built fusion power that makes stars look inefficient. We've achieved post-scarcity. We've created paradise. She turned to face him directly. We don't need the galaxy anymore, Harmonizer. We became our own galaxy. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Zethkal felt his hope crumbling. But millions will die. Billions. Entire civilizations that have existed for millions of years will be erased. Species that never harmed you, that had nothing to do with the vote. Like we had nothing to do with our rejection? Amara's voice was sharp now. We came in peace. We offered friendship. We were judged for our past while trying to build a better future. Where was the Concordate's mercy then? We were wrong. Zethkal's voice cracked with desperation. We were short-sighted and prejudiced and afraid. We made a terrible mistake. But punishing the entire galaxy for the actions of long-dead politicians, is that the humanity your ancestor believed in? The one who came to us with hope? Amara's jaw tightened. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the station systems. Finally, she spoke. You're right. My great-great-grandmother believed in hope. She believed in second chances. She believed in being better than those who hurt you. She paused. However, Zethkal leaned forward, grasping at that single word like a lifeline. We won't help you, Amara continued. But we'll help them. I don't understand. The Concordate is a government, a bureaucracy, a political entity that made a political decision to reject us. Amara pulled up images of refugee camps, of fleeing ships, of terrified civilians. These beings didn't reject us. Most of them weren't even alive 60 years ago. They're innocent people caught in a crisis not of their making. We'll save them. She brought up new displays, schematics for massive ships, fleet formations, strategic plans. We're going to evacuate everyone we can. We'll fight the Voidborn not to preserve Concordate space, but to buy time for refugees to escape. We'll relocate survivors to human worlds where they'll be safe, fed, and welcomed. We'll save as many as we possibly can. And the Concordate itself? Amara's smile was cold. Can save itself. We won't take orders from your High Council. We won't coordinate with your fleets. We won't be your army. We'll operate independently, evacuating who we choose, fighting where we decide. You wanted us to be members of your civilization. We're offering something different. We're offering mercy to those who need it while owing nothing to those who rejected us. Zethkal processed this. It wasn't what the Concordate wanted, but it was more than they deserved. Why? Why help at all? Amara touched the pin on her suit. Earth and its family of worlds. Because we're not you. We learned from our violent past instead of just condemning it. We grew, we changed. And part of that change means we don't abandon innocent beings to die just because their government wronged us. She looked at him steadily. We're better than that. We're better than you. When will you begin? Our fleets are already mobilizing. Captain Marcus Stone will lead the military operations. We'll start in Sector 7. It has the highest concentration of refugees. Amara walked toward the door, then paused. Tell your High Council something for me. Tell them humanity sends its regards. Tell them we remember the vote. Tell them we're coming to save people, not governments. And tell them that after this is over, we'll return to our space and they can return to theirs. The galaxy is big enough for both of us, Zethkal stood. Director Chen? Thank you. Even if it's not what we hoped for, thank you. Don't thank me, Amara said quietly. Thank the innocent people worth saving. They're the only reason we're coming at all. As Zethkal left Unity Station, he looked back at Earth one more time. The species the Concordate had called too violent, too primitive, too dangerous was about to save the galaxy. Not because they forgave the rejection. Not because they wanted to join the Concordate. But because after 660 years of growth, humanity had become exactly what they claimed to be all along. People who cared about doing what was right, regardless of the cost. The Terran fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a force of nature. 50,000 warships materialized in formation, each one a masterpiece of human engineering that made concordant vessels look like children's toys. They were sleek and deadly, covered in weapons that bent physics in ways that should have been impossible. At the center of the fleet, the flagship Indomitable hung like a small moon. Captain Marcus Stone stood on the bridge watching the tactical displays. He was 312 years old, had been a soldier for 2 centuries, and had never fired a shot in anger until today. His dark skin bore the faint lines of age suppressors working overtime, and his brown eyes held the calm of someone who understood the weight of command. "All ships report ready," his tactical officer announced. She was young, barely 60, eager for action she'd only read about in history files. "Remember the mission," Marcus said calmly, his voice carrying to every ship in the fleet through quantum comm links. "We're not here to conquer. We're not here to prove anything. We're here to save lives, every life we can reach. Rescue operations begin now." The human fleet ignored concordant command channels entirely. They had their own plans, their own intelligence, their own targets. The first wave headed toward the Theros system, where 40 billion refugees were trapped between advancing voidborn and failed evacuation efforts. Concordant ships had tried to help, but their transport vessels were too slow, too small, too inefficient. Human transports were different. Massive ships that could fold space around themselves, carrying millions in suspended animation. They appeared in Theros orbit and immediately began beaming up refugees. No paperwork, no verification, no debates. Just systematic, efficient evacuation. Within 6 hours, the first 10 million were aboard and heading toward human colony worlds. Then the Voidborn arrived. Marcus had read the reports, but seeing them was different. They appeared as tears in reality, shapes that human minds struggled to process, things with too many angles, colors that didn't exist, forms that shifted between dimensions. They radiated wrongness. Looking at them hurt. "All combat vessels engage," Marcus ordered. "Give the transports time to finish evacuation." The human warships moved with precision that came from centuries of simulation training. They had never fought a real war, but they had prepared for every possibility. Weapons that humanity had locked away during the peace now screamed to life. Reality bombs detonated in careful patterns, creating zones where physics became unstable. The voidborn entities that touched these zones simply ceased to exist, unable to maintain coherence in the chaos. Entropy weapons aged portions of voidborn mass at accelerated rates, turning their incomprehensible forms to dust in seconds. AI-controlled drones launched by the millions, each one making targeting decisions faster than organic minds could think. The Voidborn fought back. Their attacks were different than anything in concordant records. They could phase through shields, corrupt computer systems with their mere presence, and tear holes in space-time itself. 3 human ships died in the first minute of combat, simply erased from existence. But humanity adapted. The AI systems learned and shared knowledge across the fleet in real time. Shields reconfigured. Weapons adjusted. Within 10 minutes, human effectiveness had doubled. Within an hour, the Voidborn advance in Theros system had stopped. The evacuation continued. Admiral Kess watched from her flagship at a safe distance. She had seen the human fleet arrive and felt both hope and shame. Hope because maybe, just maybe, the galaxy had a chance. Shame because her own vessels were practically useless by comparison. When she tried to coordinate with the humans, they politely declined. "We appreciate the offer, Admiral," a human communications officer had said, "but we work best independently. Focus on your own operations. We'll handle ours." It was a diplomatic way of saying, "Stay out of our way." The pattern repeated across dozens of systems. Humans arrived, evacuated civilians with ruthless efficiency, fought the Voidborn to buy time, and moved on. They didn't seek glory. They didn't stop for medals or thanks. They just worked day after day, saving billions. The rescued species experienced human space for the first time and found it bewildering. A Theros family, insectoid beings with crystalline wings, found themselves on a human colony world called New Terra. They had expected prison camps or slave conditions. The Concordat had always taught that violent species couldn't be trusted. Instead, they found themselves in a beautiful apartment overlooking a forested valley. A human social worker named Jennifer greeted them with a warm smile. "Welcome to New Terra. This is your home now for as long as you need it. We've prepared food based on your species' nutritional requirements. There's a community center where you can meet other refugees and locals, schools for your children, job training if you want to work, though it's not required. We have more than enough for everyone. The Theros father's translation device struggled with his shock. This is free. We owe you nothing. Jennifer looked confused. Of course it's free. You're refugees. You've lost everything. Why would we charge you? She smiled. Besides, we have post-scarcity economics. Food, housing, energy, we have more than we could ever use. Sharing it costs us nothing. Over the following weeks, the Theros family discovered that humans meant it. No one asked them to convert to human culture. No one demanded loyalty oaths. No one treated them as lesser beings. They were simply welcomed. When the father cautiously asked a neighbor why humans were so kind to species that had rejected them, the neighbor shrugged. That was governments being stupid. You personally didn't do anything wrong. Why should you suffer for old political decisions? The human paused. Besides, we remember what it felt like to be rejected. We wouldn't wish that on anyone. The word spread through refugee communities. Human worlds were safe. Humans didn't discriminate. Humans had resources beyond imagination and shared freely. More and more species started requesting relocation to human space instead of remaining in Concordat territory. The war itself continued for 3 years. The Voidborn were relentless, and even human weapons couldn't destroy them permanently. But humanity fought with a creativity born from their violent past. They used tactics the peaceful Concordat had never imagined. They set traps. They used psychological warfare. They turned the Voidborn's own dimensional instability against them. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Indomitable after a particularly brutal battle. They had saved another 50 million refugees but lost 30 ships doing it. Good people who had volunteered to fight for strangers. He felt the weight of every death. Sir, his comm officer said quietly, we're receiving a transmission from Concordat High Council. They want to discuss formal alliance terms. Marcus pulled up the message. It was from Harmonizer Zeth Kal, now promoted to counselor after the deaths of so many seniors. The message was formal and flowery, discussing mutual defense treaties, shared command structures, integration of forces. Marcus deleted it without finishing. Send a reply, he told his officer. Tell them we'll continue operations as planned. We don't need an alliance. We'll fight until every refugee who wants to leave has been evacuated. Then we're going home. By year 3, the situation had stabilized. The Voidborn still held vast territories, but their advance had stopped. More importantly, over 200 billion beings had been evacuated to safety. Most had chosen to relocate to human worlds. Only a fraction wanted to return to Concordat space. The Concordat itself was a shadow of its former glory. Of the original 40,000 species, barely 15,000 remained in any meaningful numbers. The beautiful stations and grand traditions seemed hollow now, maintained by beings going through the motions of a civilization that had proven itself inadequate. Director Amara Chen received the final request for formal talks personally. The Concordat wanted to discuss permanent alliance structures, technology sharing, mutual defense pacts. They wanted humanity to join them officially, to become part of their civilization at last. She composed her response carefully. It would be the last official communication between the Terran Federation and the Galactic Concordat. To the honorable members of the High Council, she wrote, we acknowledge receipt of your proposal. After careful consideration, humanity must decline. We have fulfilled our commitment, saving innocent lives from the Voidborn crisis. That work is complete. We will now return to our own territories and continue building our own civilization. She paused, then continued. The species we rescued are welcome to join the Terran Federation if they choose. We offer full citizenship, equal rights, and partnership in building a better future. Many have already accepted. We hope more will follow. As for the Concordat itself, we bear you no ill will. We also harbor no interest in closer relations. You voted to banish Earth 1660 years ago. You declared us unworthy of your civilization. We have no desire to revisit that decision. We have built our own civilization, one based on different principles. We suggest you maintain your borders and we will maintain ours. The galaxy is vast enough for both of us to thrive separately. We wish you well in rebuilding, but we will do so apart. She signed it simply. Director Amara Chen, Terran Federation. The response from the Concordat was desperate, pleading. They offered everything, Technology, resources, formal apologies from every remaining species. They promised things would be different. They begged humanity to reconsider. Amara never replied. There was nothing more to say. Within 5 years, over 5,000 rescued species had formally joined the Terran Federation. They brought their cultures, their knowledge, their perspectives. Human space became wonderfully diverse, a melting pot of beings who had chosen to be there rather than being forced to conform. The Concordat continued to exist but never regained its former glory. It became a quiet, diminished thing, a reminder that civilizations built on exclusion and fear eventually faced their reckoning. Earth remained a garden world, its people proud of what they had built and who they had become. The quarantine boys sat in museums now, relics of a painful past that had ultimately made humanity stronger. Children born on human worlds grew up in a federation of thousands of species, learning early that diversity was strength and that everyone deserved dignity. On the anniversary of the original rejection, now celebrated as Unity Day, an elderly woman visited Sarah Chen's memorial on Earth. The statue showed the ambassador as she had been, hopeful, brave, heartbroken. The woman placed flowers at the base and read the inscription carved in stone. "We came in peace. We were turned away. But we did not become what they feared. We became what we always were, human. And that was enough." The woman smiled. Her grandmother had told her stories of that day, of the vote, of the pain, but also of the determination that followed. Humanity hadn't needed the galaxy's approval to become great. They just needed to believe in themselves. Behind her, the sun set over a world at peace, surrounded by a federation of friends rather than a concordat of judges. The galaxy had voted to banish Earth. Humanity had voted to build something better, and they had